I hope I'm audible.
Very much, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Namaste and good evening to everybody. Good morning to the people who are joining from the Western world, US and other countries. Welcome to our distinguished speaker, Ms. Manisha Girotra, and our Mr. Govind Iyer Gita, who is joining from US, our Vice President Savan Goriawala, ladies and gentlemen. And this is the 14th Lalita Iyer AMA annual lecture, and with the wonderful theme, Power of Sisterhood, delivered by Ms. Manisha Girotra, who is currently the CEO of Moelis India. And she's a highly accomplished person in the field of finance and investment banking. Govind will be introduced very shortly. And this lecture is held under the auspices of the Dr. Lalita Iyer AMA Center for the Development of Women. This was set up by Mr. P.V.R.N. Iyer, late Mr. P.V.R.N. Iyer, in memory of his wife, Dr. Lalita Iyer, who was a gynecologist by profession and worked ceaselessly for the empowerment of women, predominantly from the labor areas. She also addressed a host of issues, ranging from, say, gender discrimination or marital disharmony and related issues. And she did not limit her, counseling and talking to women alone. She also talked to men with issues concerning family relationships and helped, as much as she could, And we fondly remember Mr. P.V.R.N. Iyer, who passed away about 5 years ago. He was AMA's president in the 80s. And on a personal note, he was the first AMA president I met. I was a student in those days, actually. Yeah. And he was also subsequently the president of the All India Management Association. He has mentored many persons, including me, and I was very fortunate to know him very closely. Besides this activity center, AMA has got various activity centers, people set up an endowment. So we have over 55 activity centers. So Mr. Iyer has set up 2 other activity centers at AMA, namely the P.V.R.N. Iyer AMA Research Forum, where we, in this center, we help the PhD students. We have, a forum, and we have a library where we have a lot of repository of information for the PhD students. And another center is the AMA Past Presidents School of Grooming, And coming back to this activity center, Dr. Lalita Iyer AMA Center for the Development of Women, the core area, or I would say that the center revolves around the fact that a world that is better for women is better for everyone. This sentence is very important, while this center was formulated by Mr. P.V.R.N. Iyer and his family members. So, and this lecture is dedicated to perpetuate Dr. Lalita Iyer's memory, and she devoted her time for the cause of women development and empowerment, And I clearly remember those days when this inaugural lecture, I think it was Mrs. Anuaga Govind as well as Hema Ravichander, during the inauguration talk, which was it was a very wonderful function. And over the years, we have had distinguished persons, some of them, I can remember Dr. Kiran Bedi, Kiran Majumdar Show last year, Ms. Shaheen Mistry, then Dr. Indu Sahai, Rohini Nilkani, Leslie Thomas, and many other accomplished speakers in the past, Other activities under this center include publishing relevant books or booklets, and we have conducted training programs relevant to women empowerment conducted by accomplished trainers and leaders, and these are attended by individual volunteers, say like there are institutions in Ahmedabad, NGOs like Seva, Chetana, EVAG, ARSP, and some these kind of groups. But I'll admit that in the past 2 years, due to COVID and restricted physical activity, this was not done, but all other activities at AMA have resumed. So this is also resumed very shortly. And as I said, 2 years was sort of a lot of restrictions. And we are fortunate that both Govind and Gita, that is Mr. Iyer's son and daughter, respectively, are playing an active role in nurturing the center. Sorry. and center and getting highly accomplished speakers each year. And of course, Govind himself have been involved in different areas of social work. And today's format, well, Govind will introduce our distinguished speaker, and that's conducted in a format of a fireside chat, and there'll be a Q&A session, one or two sessions accordingly, as per the interest of the speakers. So once again, I welcome you all once again, and thank you all for attending in large numbers. And I hand it over to Govind. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Radia. It's lovely to see nearly 100 people on the group.
Great.
And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the AMA for really furthering this dream and vision my father had when my mother passed away in 2003. And we've been very fortunate to get the support and the guidance from them on many aspects. My sister Geeta is in Boston. I'm in Bombay. And we want to thank Manisha for joining us today. Manisha is somebody that I've known for many years professionally, and the last couple of weeks, a little more personally, looking at all her videos, her YouTube, spending time with her, understanding what makes her tick, and she'll tell us more about that. All I would say is that it's going to be exciting sharing of views that she'll have. I'm sure some views will be provocative, and I hope they will be. And I hope we'll have a discussion, an engaging discussion with the various people on this group. The way we'll do this is Manisha has had the experience of having worked in a variety of different companies, largely in the financial services industry, but also been exposed to a lot of family businesses, a lot of businesses in India, and has seen a diaspora of both men and women across the landscape. The power of sisterhood is something that she thought of as a theme, where she really wants to talk about how we can really all be much better off if we all as a community, both men and women, collectively grow. And she's going to specifically speak a little more about the role of men and the role of women in making this happen. She'll share her views on that, and I have a few questions I'll ask her along the way. The way we'll do this is, if you have any questions, please put them on the chat group. Most of you, I'm sure, know how to use Zoom now. The chat group's to the right. And we will have a live Q&A also. So if you ever want, when I open up the live Q&A, if you want to ask a question live, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom end of the Zoom, and we'll be happy to take your questions. We will end promptly at 7:30 India time. So be rest assured that we'll try and keep it as tight as we can. So before we start, something fun. I thought let's do a bit of a poll. Let's see what we have amongst the 100 people. What's the bit of a cross section of the group we have here? So George or Sapna, if you can just throw out the first question, it'll be nice in terms of a poll. And if you can just take a minute and just quickly answer that question. George, there it is, yeah. Just a quick ping as to where you're dialing in from. Where are you calling in from? From India, UK, US, Europe, Asia? I just want to get a sense of who's present where. Super. So we have a large Indian audience, which is fantastic. We still have some more responses to come through. Some others, if you can just pick your selection, we'll stop when we get to about 75%. Okay, so that's about large majority from India. And the next question, which is to get a sense of the profile of the people in the room. You can go to the next question. Just to get a sense of, are they youngsters? Are they people in the early stages of their professional development and otherwise? So just to get a sense of the diaspora in the room. Manisha, you'll know how much provocation you will get and how many. So that's nice. So we have 80-20 at this point. Good. Okay, so we have a fair. I'm hoping for the 16 people who are less than 35 to be the most vocal. So guys, always be ready for questions and answers from that group. So thanks for that. So we'll end this poll. And let's move on to Manisha. So Manisha, let me get started by first asking you a little bit about your own journey. I know some of the journey that you've been through in your school, college days, and then your working career, but maybe you can talk to us about some experiences you've had and what shaped you, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's, what were the things that shaped you until you really got into the workplace?
Thank you, Govind. Good evening, everyone. And a real special thank you to Geeta, you and Sadia for letting me do this. I read about your mom and it just inspired me. You're both blessed, Geeta and Govind, to be born to a woman like that. And you're making her proud. So I'm sure she's happy looking at you from up there. Moving on to me, I think just a little bit on my background. I was born to a middle-class family. I grew up in a small town, Simla, very much had the small town upbringing. My mother is one of three sisters, extremely focused on our academics, complete tiger mom. I think she herself was a working woman and she always felt that both her kids should be financially independent. And there was no distinguishing between me and my younger brother as far as she was concerned. I think through our entire growing up years, till college, and she was completely focused on our academics. Being a professor, a math professor by training, maybe that she carried the teacher role back home too, and we had to bear the brunt of it. I think Govind and Geeta, I shared with you that even when I was in St. Stephen's College and I was 19 or 20 years old, I in one subject slipped my grades and my mother locked me up in our bathroom for literally overnight to say, you need to introspect on what's going on. So, and I have a 19-year-old daughter today and I can't even imagine doing something like that. So but she of course denies it now, but that's the kind of upbringing I had, middle class, full of love and happiness, but very focused on academics. My father is a banker by training, and I think somewhere I probably followed him in his footsteps. Now, when I look back, I think the biggest thing that my parents could give me, of course, education and all, and exposure and travel and all that is good, is the fact that for my father, I was a favorite child. I still am. My brother still holds it against him. But I think that made me so confident as a woman. I never felt a second-rate citizen ever through growing up. I mean, this concept of women taking a backseat in any avenue of life was literally unknown to me till I got into the workforce. And when I see it now, so when I entered, I didn't entered the workforce, I didn't think there was anything wrong with me, because I felt there was something wrong with the people I was meeting, because I wasn't used to an ecosystem where man was preferred to a woman in any ways. So I think that really helped mold me into the person I am. The concept of sisterhood that you said, Govind and Geeta, I think that really played a critical role in my childhood. As I said, I was born to a middle-class family, limited means, but a huge ecosystem of family and friends around us. And I saw how they all rallied around us children, around the families, at all times to basically nurture and bring up the kids and help with the family. So my mother, as I mentioned to you, is a maths teacher. She literally taught the whole tribe of children. She was the educationist. There were other moms who were probably good at knitting sweaters, similar as a cold place. We didn't have the means to go out and buy expensive sweaters and clothes. So that mom would probably just knit sweaters for the whole tribe. And I think as a result, they just uplifted the community, and we would and pack a punch much more than what we with our means could have, just by coming together as a community and as sisters and working together as one towards the upliftment of all families. And that's really the background that I carried into work, where the community all worked and aligned with each other, literally like the African elephant herd pack, where the matriarchal mom just leads the whole pack. And that's the background I came with into the workforce. Switch to the workforce, I think was especially when I started in 1992, was a very different work environment. It was very male dominated. Women were not in the world of finance, Govind, as you would know. And Geeta, you also belong to this community, so you know. The best compliment I ever got when I went into a meeting, into an office, was, "Are you a journalist?" That's the most I got upgraded to. Most thought I was the assistant or the secretary or the presentation carrier of the team, even when I was leading the team. A lot of people wouldn't shake my hand. They didn't know really how to deal with a woman. When I talk numbers and cash flows and balance sheets and industry analysis, that was seen as something very awkward, because, while people had accepted women in caregiver roles, in teacher roles, in journalist roles, in educationist role, I don't think they were ready to accept a woman as an investment banker. So it was a challenging journey. It's challenging for anyone. Investment banking is not for the weak-hearted, especially, as you would know, but male or female. So I don't want to make it sound like, I was a martyr or anything, but I think the fact that I was a woman in a team of largely men, any conference room I would enter would mostly be men. I would probably be the only woman in most of the meetings and presentations, just made it harder. But I think that's where my upbringing helped me a lot, because I was not intimidated in a male community. I didn't feel any less. I was never made to feel any lesser just because of my gender. And I think that's what, that confidence that I carried into the meeting room helped me tide over the initial few years where you just had to keep on repeatedly proving your credibility. Most people thought I was probably there because I was looking for a good groom. And as soon as I get the good groom, I take that box and move on. Or then as soon as I have the child, I'm definitely going to go, it was always that, what is the benchmark at which she will exit? And I think the fact that I stayed on needed a lot of tenacity and, a lot of resilience to basically meet people across different, as you said, different families and business families at that point also were very, very male dominated. So even there, it would take a lot of, guts to basically tell them that, look, I can't talk to you about selling your business or, something as confidential as that, or bringing in a partner. A lot of times my boss would be told that, would you like her to step out? And he would be like, no, I had a great first boss, Ajay Sombi, and he was like, no, she's an integral part of the team. So I think somewhere along my own grit and resilience, and the ecosystem of family and colleagues, some of the colleagues that I was fortunate to work with helped me to be here 30 years later, still working and still loving every minute of it. So probably stop there, Govind, and maybe let you ask any questions.
Yeah, I guess that's a great way to start talking about your early journey. I think what will be very, very useful to understand at this point from your perspective, Manisha, is that if you had to look at the world today and look at it what it was 20 years ago, what's changed in a positive way that's allowing equal opportunity for everybody, but also the opportunity for both the environment to help you adapt to this situation? What's changed in the way in the workforce, whether it's Moelis from when you were started ANZ? What's changed?
Sure. So I think Indians have always been, middle class Indians have always been very, very focused on giving both the boys and girls education. But I think where it didn't translate into working for women was in a couple of years into the workforce. The family itself would say, look, you're getting married, and probably it's not a great idea for you to continue working. So the home ecosystem pulled you back to 3-5 years into working, definitely when the kids came. I think that's changing. I think very slowly. The pace is not something that I feel happy with, but I think somewhere at least more families are getting supportive of seeing their women working. At work, a lot is changing. I think a lot of corporates are now conscious of the fact that they want more women in their workforce. It makes better economic sense. The client, the customer for most large companies, if you're a consumer company, is a woman. And it's odd that the decisions are being made by a boys' club if the customer is a woman. So it makes sense to have women in companies, and I think organizations are realizing that. Globally, companies in Norway, Sweden have shown you that boards which have like 30 to 40% women representation are actually much better boards in terms of governance, in terms of responsibility, in terms of succession planning. So I think there is a wider buy-in for women in the workforce, in the corporate. There are, of course, mandates also, and Govind, you're familiar with it from your days, that there are mandates. People want to mandatorily have women on boards. SEBI's mandated that. Organizations want to have more women in there. So there is a bit of a diversity tick, but look, as my grandfather always said, you may get in for the wrong reasons, but stay in for the right reasons. So, as a woman, even if you're getting in as a diversity hire, I always tell people, if it's in a company, if it's in a private equity, which just wants to show that they have 1 or 2 women, or if it's on a board which with mandate by the regulator, that's fine. But then go in and prove your credibility and show that you're resilient and want to stay the course. So I think the ecosystem is changing. I think women themselves are wanting to push much harder. They're much more ambitious. I wouldn't say they're much more ambitious, but they're more open about their ambition. I don't think we were any less ambitious, but we were sort of awkward about it, and we sort of sugar-coated it. And, we were always like, our first role is that of a caregiver or a nurturer. My mom's a great homemaker, and I think that always played in my mind, as the fact that I couldn't meet up to her standards. But I think today girls are more confident about their ambition, want to choose partners who respect their ambition. So I think both at home and at work, things are changing. The pace is not something that makes me happy, especially at home, because we'll talk a little bit about it, that the patriarchy does come in, especially when the kids happen or the parents are aging. It's always the woman who's the fall guy when it comes to her career. But I think organizations, and Indian organizations too, this is not just multinationals, Indian organizations are doing a lot. The last 2-3 years with the pandemic, I think the work from home was tough for women because, the kids are at home, parents are at home. But I hope organizations remember this and carry this as a memory that, look, work from home is a reality. And if a woman wants to come into work 3 to 4 days a week and balance 2 days, wants to work from home, in today's day, we are having this whole conversation over Zoom. Typically, we would be in Ahmedabad, right? Govind, Geeta, you and all of us. We're having this conversation seamlessly on Zoom. So I hope organizations carry that memory and, allow women the flexibility, because women have demonstrated actually that they are more loyal than men to their careers. Men will switch for a little bit of money, a little bit of promotion. Women don't. If you support them through times where they are, where the kids are young or they need to be more, be at home or, rush off for a parent-teacher meeting. I have seen all these women that I have interviewed, hired, retained. They are so much more loyal than the men. And, loyalty in organizations like ours does pay off, because you need to show continuity with the client. Clients like that. They don't want to see new people all the time. So I'm a big believer that you support women. You're actually doing it because serves your organization so much better in the long run. And studies after studies have shown that.
Yeah, that's a great point. In fact, one of the things I wanted to just do a sideway conversation is the role of, your own family, whether it was Sanjay, whether it's the kids, whether it's your extended system. You talked about Sanjay's family and also everybody being doctors and educated. Share a little bit about how that influenced your ability to also do things, because all of us are a success of our environment. And what role did that play? Because that really helps us think of our own journeys in making our environment better for others around us.
So I always tell the young women in my team that when you're choosing a partner, don't worry about him. Meet the mother-in-law. Interview the mother-in-law first. If she's supportive, everything's good. The husband you'll mold anyways. And that's been my experience. I married into a family of doctors. My mother-in-law is one of 8 sisters. They're all doctors, married into doctors. So, working came as a way of life for them. I remember early into my career, about 2 years into my job, Govind, I got posted into a city different from Sanjay. I had to move to Bombay and Sanjay was still in Delhi. And my mother-in-law said to me, what's the big deal? It's a flight away. Why you, so I came home very worried and said, oh my God, is this the end of my career? And she came in and said, look, she knocked at the door, heard me and Sanjay talking about this. We were discussing who will quit. And she was like, you guys are living the dark ages. There's a plane and it's a 2-hour ride. And, just take a flight ticket and once a month or whatever it is, just go and do it. And I actually moved to Bombay before Sanjay did, and he managed to follow me. But I think that helped because, or that whole ecosystem also programmed Sanjay into believing that, it is okay to have a working woman. It's okay if my wife has to take a red eye when Tara was young and, if she's unwell. If Manisha has to go, he has to chip in. If there's a Sunday evening where I have a presentation or I'm just tired and he has to go to that birthday party or he has to go to that parent-teacher meeting, I don't think he ever batted an eyelid. He thought of it as, he changed more diapers for my daughter than I did, honestly. So I think it came from his ecosystem, as you said, Govind, we're a product of our ecosystem. And I think Sanjay is a product of his ecosystem too. So that helped me because while I faced a lot of sexism, etc. at work, I didn't face it at home at all. At my home front, I didn't have to worry. The work front was a different ball game, especially in my generation. But the home front helped enormously. And the same holds for my daughter. Initially I would, like all moms, working moms, carry my guilt all the time. I was 24/7 programmed to guilt. But today when I see my daughter, she takes a lot of pride in my work. I remember when I set up Moelis for Ken Moelis, my boss and the founder of this firm. 1 year into it, we had gone off for a Christmas holiday. And at midnight on New Year's Eve, we were staying up to wish each other. And my daughter said to me, so this is year 1 of Moelis in India, saying, how much money do you make for Moelis in India? Are you profitable? Are you break even? And I was like, this is like 4 years ago. And I was like, oh my God, even Ken doesn't ask me this until Christmas Eve. Cut me some slack, Tara. But that's how she takes pride. And even now when I tell her that maybe I should go do something, and she's like, why? You need to work, just keep going, right? So I think kids build that pride in your career too. And when it's easier for me to say it now, as you said, there are young people on this group. When kids are young, you really feel the guilt, and my parents were very supportive in-laws. They came in whenever Sanjay and I were traveling, but still but Sanjay never felt the guilt, but I was always programmed to guilt that, why am I leaving my child? Am I a bad mom? Why is her tiffin not as nice looking as the one who as her best friend who comes with this perfect tiffin with a little inspiration note, while poor Tara had I think 2 Mari biscuits and a tomato sandwich all through her growing up years. So So I used to feel the guilt all the time. Sanjay was like, there's no big deal. This is character building. She can go and have her friends lunch if she likes it so much. But women are not like that. And that comes also from the whole point you said about sisterhood, right? I mean, we want to be validated so much by the other women in our group, in our community, that, if we are not, we carry that sense of guilt. So I carried that sense of guilt through Tara's growing up years. But I just want to say to all the young women that, look, it's wasted. And actually, if you lead by example, both your daughters and your sons, by working, you will make them, better, stronger, proud people in yourself, and better mates to their own partners when they choose it, boy or girl, right? Because he would have seen how if it's a boy, he would have seen how his own ecosystem would have worked. And if it's a girl, she'll be like, no, I need to work. If my mother could do it in her generation, I can do it too. So please shake off the guilt. It does nothing but mess up with your own health. If that's one message I can leave to all of you, that's the message I leave for you, that shake off the guilt. It's completely unnecessary.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. My mother, as Devesh mentioned earlier, my mother was a gynecologist. She used to be out at hospital sometimes in the middle of the night. And I remember my sister and I, she claims, I don't remember this myself, but she claims that when we were 8 or 9 years old, we used to feel the lack of not having her at home in the afternoons. So She decided that I'm not going to give up my career, but I'm going to start working mornings. And so I can be home at 4 o'clock to be with the kids. And that was her way of keeping her identity going, but at the same time serving, being there for us. And yes, I'll never forget that balance that she was able to get to keep her identity as a doctor, but also serve the family.
There's a good point, Govind. I think women, your mom, she has this serious career. People are coming to her with, big issues on pregnancy, on, et cetera, childbirth, et cetera. And still she's managing to multitask. And I don't think men do that very well. I don't think men can go back home, spend that 2 hours discussing issues that were important, Govind, to you and Geeta as children on how you didn't get an A in your maths test, etc., and then go back to working, right? It's commendable how women do it, right? And a lot of people say multitasking is overrated, but I think women do it so well, especially women in India. You can go from looking after the kitchen to the children, to then just suddenly talking about, in your mom's case, serious issues about pregnancy, childbirth, etc. In my case, balance sheets, etc. I think that's something that is unique to women in my experience.
So I'm going to open it up a little bit more to the audience. Geeta, are there any questions you think that can have come in? Or else I'll open it even for live. If anybody wants to raise hand and ask a question, then we'll move to some other topics.
No questions as yet. So folks, please feel free to put in your questions now.
And if anybody wants to ask a question, feel free to raise hand and we can get them to speak before we move on to the next area. Please ask provocative questions. Please ask challenging questions. The idea is debate. The idea is discussion. And there's free speech here, so no issues. Yeah. I guess one of the areas that somebody was saying, okay. I guess one of the areas that will be very useful, Manisha, to talk about is how can women support women as well? And I think you and I discussed very briefly, I think you alluded to it already, about the fact that sometimes there's more competitiveness and are there enough places and roles for women? If you want to just talk about what your journey on that has been through experiencing that and how you've been successful in ensuring that the group as a whole come up together.
Sure, thanks, Govind. I think two aspects. One is the personal aspect, one is the professional aspect. In my 30 years of working, and I've been absolutely passionate about hiring women at work. When we start off with young analysts and associates, I try and ensure that the workforce is 50-50 for women and men as we start off. And the girls are as enthusiastic from the business schools that you and Geeta have been to, and they all join with as much enthusiasm as the guys. As we discussed before, come 5-6 years into the workforce, women who get married, have children, come to me and say, I'm thinking of quitting. And I say, why? And they say, oh, my husband's earning well now, and my mom or my mom-in-law, and the mom as much as the mother-in-law, say, why do you want to work now? Focus on the family, etc. The income is good, and then when the kids come, it's the same conversation. And the conversation carrier always is that, my mom or my mom-in-law says, look, why do you want to do this to yourself? This takes a toll on your health, and you look after the kids. That's priority now. Similarly, at a later stage when they're aging parents. So I think I'm not trying to say that, women are against women. It's just that we become the biggest carrier of patriarchy. We've been taught this so much from our childhood that the family and is the primary responsibility of the woman, that, subconsciously the mother or the mother-in-law will do it. I think, there's this famous discussion that Indira Nooyi had, where she said she came back from a board meeting of Pepsi home, and there was no milk in her house. And her mom, who was visiting, told her, leave your crown in the garage and go fetch some milk. So, that's, she could have very well told Indira's husband that apparently he was in the house at that point, but she wouldn't do that. So I think, we subconsciously, even the most, women who are working tend to basically benchmark the house as a responsibility of the women, and as a result of it, women drop off. So I want some of that to be shared. I want at home women to be the biggest supporters of women, right? Of course, as I mentioned to you earlier, as a woman, I'm in any way programmed to guilt. But I want my ecosystem to come around me, especially the women who have done it, whose kids have already grown up, like a mother or a mother-in-law or an aunt, to say, look, it's okay. Kids fall sick. Kids, don't do well in exams, but you don't have to quit for that. Your husband can help, or you can get tutors. Things can be outsourced. Kids get better. They are resilient. They bounce back. And if you hear that from other women, it is so much more of a validation than, let's say hearing it from your husband or someone where it's a man and you think, oh, I'm not going to trust him. He's never been through this. So if women can become the biggest supporters of women at home, I think a lot more women will stay at home, because I will feel that I'm not being judged for what I'm doing. I'm not being seen as a selfish mom or a selfish wife or a selfish homemaker by other women. We're social creatures. We want validation by other women. And it's really important that all the women around working women rally around to support her and encourage her. So that's the first thing at home. At work, again, when I joined, for example, and a lot of people ask me, I think Geeta asked me this too, did I have a role model? There wasn't enough representation of women at work. So there was no one I could look up to and say, look, she can do it, so I can do it too. If we support each other at work, if we allow some of these more flexible work from home, if we allow women to have their babies, have longer maternity leaves, maybe even have paternity leaves. Govind, I think you mentioned that your organization is considering paternity leaves to be as long as maternity leaves. If you can support women through that, you'll have more women inspiring women to stay in the workforce. When I entered, there was just a boys' club, right? And I was desperately trying to be part of that boys' club. I was desperately trying to go for that drink on a Friday evening, network with the men. If I went to a social event, I would network with the men, not with the women, because I wanted to be seen as one of the guys. Because there weren't enough role models. And I thought if I align myself more with the men and be seen as one of them and seen as one of the boys, then I will be more accepted. But that should not be the case. I should be proud of my identity as a woman and, have more women who I can be inspired by and say, look, I'm a woman. This is what I bring to the table. Maybe I can't drink beer every Friday evening at 6 p.m. because I need to go back to my family. But what I bring to the work Monday to Friday should be more than enough for you to retain me, hire me, and nurture my talent. So both at work and at home, I feel, we talk a lot about feminism and how we need to promote that. The only way it's going to happen is if more women support it. Of course, men are needed. Men have to be part of the conversation, not just, you just can't have a conversation where women, are leading that conversation. But we must have women rally around with each other, because the power of sisterhood is so good that, it will make each one of us do better, just because we know we have that support and we don't have to watch our back. And at home, at work, if somebody needs to go at 1 p.m. for a parent-teacher meeting, she shouldn't have to, just run away or slip away or say she has a meeting. She should be saying, yes, I'm going for a parent-teacher meeting, but I'll be back at 3:30. Like you said, your mom came back at 4:30. I will be back and I will give it my best, right? And maybe while going to the meeting, coming back to the meeting on my iPad, on my phone, I'll be continuing doing my work. But I shouldn't be apologetic about that. And there are other women who should support you on that. Because men they don't understand it, right? They leave their troubles or their home tasks back at home to their wives. So you need more women to support that. So that's really where I come from, women, that I feel that a lot more women should just be cheerleaders for women. And you'll see a lot more women staying in the workforce.
And I think if I had to build on that, Manisha, this the little bit change that I'm seeing is, I think being honest about why you need the time off, why you need to do things, is something that if it's owned up, I think even everybody around, men, women, will change, because that's the honesty that we need to be on that. So I appreciate your saying that. There was an interesting question from somebody who asked the question that I know Moelis is something that you created and you built in India, and you've been at UBS for many years. while building leaders in your organizations, what do you think are some of the things you've done to support women that probably others can emulate or others can learn from, that will help us create a larger workforce with both men and women equally represented?
So as I said, when we start off hiring analysts and associates, there's a joke in my organization that I hunt women, right? So I literally go out there and see, and I ask my team if they hire a guy, that why is it that a woman was not selected in her position? So at the entry level, I really try and make sure that the workforce is 50-50, if not more. The other thing that I think that I did is that I stopped being apologetic about times that when I had to run out for my personal work in the middle of the day. I made it clear that I was going away for personal reasons, that I didn't say I was going away for a meeting or I was going away for a client lunch meeting. I said, no, my daughter stopped her exam and, I'm taking her out for lunch and I'll be back. So I think I lost the inhibition of, saying that I'm a woman and I need to do these other things. And that sort of inspired other women. And they said to me that it inspired them because they didn't feel apologetic about carrying their personal issues or personal commitments into work. So I think that's another thing I did. Third, I have absolutely no issues, male or female, if you're working from home or wherever else, so long as you're delivering results. Investment banking is about delivering a P&L. Each one of us, as we get senior, has a P&L. We need to deliver on certain numbers. You can be sitting on a beach in Maldives and telling me that you're sitting there, but you're delivering on your tasks and on your P&L, and I'm absolutely fine with it. I don't need you to be sitting in front of me and clocking 10 hours. I, in fact, discount that. I think people who are sitting there 10, 12 hours are probably jaded after 5 or 6 p.m. and, are probably not giving it the best. So I often joke with them that you should go out and have a drink now with someone, you probably need some fresh air. We all live in this air-conditioned environment. So I think those things helped, right? Because the moment you make it clear that you don't have to sit here till the boss is sitting. If I'm sitting one day till 9:30 p.m., you don't have to just keep sitting because I'm sitting. You can please go ahead. I think helps. So some of these things helped in retaining women talent. Have I been as successful as I would like to be? No, I would like to retain a lot more women. I lose a lot of them in their mid-30s, 10, 12 years into their career. Breaks my heart. But I do manage to retain 20 to 30% of them.
Okay, I'm going to hand to Geeta. Geeta, there are a couple of questions that have come up.
Yeah, a few of them. So you mentioned, Manisha, that you used to be consumed with guilt. And you mentioned it a few times with us as well as now. The question that's come up on the chat is, how were you able to assuage that guilt? What are some of the things that you did? Sorry.
Yeah, so I think I carried it with me for a long time. And Geeta, what I did was that I sacrificed my me time and myself for everything else. Everything else took priority: my work, my child, my home, my friends. But I didn't do anything that I enjoyed. Right? I like playing golf. I like listening to music. I love reading. I like exercising. I stopped all of that. When I set up Moelis, the gardening leave that I had between UBS and Moelis, which was in 2011-12, I actually regained myself. There was time that I had the whole day to myself, and Tara was at school till 3 or 4, and I actually started paying attention to my health, started exercising, started reading, started meeting friends that I wanted to meet, not friends of my daughters, friends' moms, or friends who were my childhood friends. I reconnected with them. I spent time with them. And I realized actually that I came out so much more energetic through that process. Instead of being tired and collapsing in bed at 11 p.m., which I did till then, I actually felt more rejuvenated. That laugh that I had with a childhood friend from my similar days who was in school with me, and we discussed some silly things, or that exercise, 40 minutes of yoga that I did, made me a newer person and made me more energetic, not just for my work, but for my child. So I think I always say, as women, please spend me time. And me time doesn't, till this gardening leave happened to me, I thought me time was spending time with my daughter and doodling with crayons. I'm a terrible artist. I don't enjoy drawing, right? That was not my me time. That was what my daughter liked to do. It's not my me time. My me time, as I said, was probably sitting with a book under a tree or reading or, just spending time with childhood friends and just having a laugh. And I did that. And just 30 to 40 minutes of that, and maybe a couple of hours in the afternoon, and maybe even, even going on for a holiday, which is not your husband, not your spouse, not your family, just with your girlfriends or yourself if you want to. Just do that and you will come back rejuvenated. And I think that was the turning point of my working life, where I realized that I'm important for myself too, not just for everyone else.
Thank you. Yes, that is so true. I've seen that for myself too. Another question, you talked about, sometimes women having to choose a flexible route. I think this was on the heels of what Govind shared. But what tends to happen with that is that also potentially slows down growth in your career. And the thought, at least historically, is to be equal, you have to put in equal effort and equal time. What are your thoughts on that? Has that changed? Or is that changing?
So, that's a good question. It's a balance, right? If you're a professional and you've signed up for a difficult, challenging career, then you can't be asking for too many special favors either. For example, look at my career. It's about mergers and acquisitions. It's about helping companies raise money, which at that point is the most urgent thing for that company to do. Or a founder promoter is selling his company. I can't tell him you need to hold on for 2 months because now the next 2 months, our priority, it's my daughter's board exams. So I don't want to discount it and say, it's all very rosy, and now that there's work from home and online, things are much easier. When you brace up to do a profession like investment banking or private equity or in the tech world, you do need to realize that you are going to give a lot of yourselves to these careers. So I don't think I want to anyway tell people that, look, it's all great and it's all warm and fuzzy. And it's not warm and fuzzy for the men too. There are a lot of men on this on this chat. I can see Louis, etc. And they can tell you that it was as challenging for them. I'm sure there were times for them too that they had to sacrifice at their personal front and focus on their career. So men and women, I think the work at a lot of times will take priority. But I think what's now changing is that there is an acknowledgement that an employee is only a better employee if his or her personal needs and personal priorities are also given importance. That was not the case when I started. You were not meant to have any personal priorities, personal likes. You couldn't talk about that. You can today talk about it more, and that's I hope will be game changing. Work from home, I hope will be game changing. But let me not at any point say that, look, it's a bed of roses. Any profession is a tough profession and does take a lot out of you.
Fair enough. Yep. Thank you. Sort of the couple of questions around men and sort of their role. There's one observation that oftentimes the reaction of men when they see another man taking up more family responsibilities is that they almost feel threatened or worried that the same may be expected of them. Obviously, they're not ready for it. And the second is, how could we sort of normalize this equal relationship between men and women? How do we let men feel that they're equal participants in the home and family? Any thoughts on both of that?
Sure. So look, from my experience, I think we have always felt that whether it's our daughter, we have only one child, our daughter, or our parents, or the home, it's an equal responsibility for both of us. If the washing machine is not working and the maid knows that she can call me or Sanjay up, and we both will have the numbers, for example, to take a small example, to make that call and get that sorted. It's not that you can't call up Sanjay at work if I don't take the call. Of course, the first protocol will always be me, but they do that. So I think it's very important, and there the man's role is important because he needs to demonstrate both at home and at work that the home responsibility, the children responsibility is equally his. I think in my case, I have absolutely no issues with my male colleagues coming into the office and saying, look, I need to go to my daughter's parent-teacher meeting, or I'm taking my daughter for a 2-day trek, because my wife's traveling on work. So we just thought we'll take. So you need to make men more comfortable around the conversation on personal issues at work. And that's not just women can't do that. Men themselves have to do it. As you said, men get nervous if there's another man working and, when they go home, their wife's going to beat them up. Boys club will always have that joke that don't do this, because then tomorrow I'll be expected to do this. Why? Because it's seen as a weakness for the man. But when you pivot this to a conversation from being this is a weak guy, or this is a guy who's just too soft, to know this is equally a man's responsibility, and this is actually a good guy, who's helping his wife, who's helping his daughter. I mean, when we were younger, so many times in a week, when Sanjay would go and buy the groceries of the house, and not me if I were on a red eye or traveling. And I know he was poked fun at, but it never bothered him. He was like equally. So we need to pivot the conversation at home, at work, and at home. To say that, look, this is a family that is committed to 2 careers, and if you're committed to 2 careers, then at home also there have to be 2 people. There have to be 2 hands to the deck. Otherwise, one person, it is inevitably going to fail. One person can't keep the entire house and work up. So the conversation needs to change from it being one of embarrassment to one of owning your responsibilities at home and actually having pride in it, saying that look, my wife needs to work, so I need to do this, and this is as much my job as yours. And that's that belittling in the boys' club of men who take ownership of their work at home needs to change, and that needs to change at home too, right? Again, to the point that Govind made earlier in terms of a patriarchal mindset, women being the carriers. A mom of a young boy should teach her son as much about the fact. I think I read somewhere about, I can't remember who, that when his mom was chopping vegetables, she would always have him around. So this man said, I know how to chop vegetables perfectly, and I actually do it even before my wife comes home and I've cooked, etc. So he didn't feel any inhibition about it. So you must teach your boys to cook as much as you teach your girls to work, right? That's very important. You teach your girls to code, but teach your boys to cook. These are all life skills, and all of us should have them. And I, for example, don't know how to cook, because I said to you, my mom was so razor focused on academics that we didn't sort of spend any time teaching her. My husband knows it. And today I say to all women and men that it's a very important life skill, and we all must know it, right? Whether it's woman or man, because it's a core responsibility, and we both should have it. So a lot needs to, it's a difficult question, and sorry for the long answer, but a lot needs to be changed for this, both at work and at home, for the mindset to change.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, very insightful. I think one of the things that you talked about was the pride. Earlier on you talked about being proud of being a woman and not being apologetic, in the workforce or otherwise. And likewise, it's, you referred to the pride at being a man who can support his family in a variety of ways, including being an equal partner at home, and being proud of that. So that's not something to be, ashamed of among other men. Yeah.
You should be as proud of your golf handicap as you should be about supporting your wife. She's, taking a nap and you're taking the kids to the park to play. I think that's much of an achievement, and there should be no embarrassment around that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm going to take the liberty of speaking. Both Geeta, who's worked 30 years, and you continue to work many, many years. Both of you have been proven to be able to manage family and manage work. But I'm going to say that I'm seeing a big change in the way organizations, putting my ego inside the hat, are looking at things. Now we have many, many clients who insist on a slate of at least 20 to 30% of women candidates before they even look at meeting any individuals. And I think that's the change that's happening across the world. And I think it's a very positive change. And there's somebody on this call who will remain unnamed, I remember, who reached out to me and wanted to get back in the workforce, and mentioned to me an organization out there that was prepared to take women back after a break. And I just made one phone call to somebody I knew there, and within, I think it was a week or so, they got the job because they were supporting women coming back to work. So I think there's a movement out there that's really positive that's happening. And I think we all need to really accelerate that movement much faster, Manisha, to the point you're making. It's a combined effort of both men, women, but the environment and the organizations recognizing this need. So I'm going to go to a question that came up from somebody who wants to remain unnamed, but I will just read out the question. Give me a minute. In terms of how do we create a really inclusive culture? What have you seen, and may not be where you work, but you may have observed other organizations also, Manisha, as you serve other organizations. because men also need to advocate the change and create an equitable workplace. So have you seen any good examples where we can learn from and try to emulate? Have you got any pearls of wisdom there?
Yeah, so I have both as clients and served on boards of companies in Norway, Sweden, which is a very egalitarian society. The gender conversation doesn't even come up. That's how much it's evolved. And I've always asked them that how did you reach this level? And they say that it's exactly what you said, Govind, that they made men part of the conversation too. A lot of times when we're having these diversity conversations and HR of our organizations has organized it, you bring the women in and you talk to them about work from home or work-life balance or multitasking and not feeling the guilt. But I always say, why don't men come into these meetings, right? Because they're part of the problem, they're part of the solution. So if you're going to have to solve this problem and accelerate the solution and not just make it 1 or 2 women hires for a tick in the box, then you need to basically have a culture which stems from the top as being inclusive. You don't make it an HR issue that diversity is, it's like diversity, sustainability, or these are just issues that we have to tick in the box with our investors, so somebody in HR will take care of it. No, it has to become a way of life. And organizations which have made it a way of life are the ones that have really brought about the change. Some consumer companies like Unilever, Marico in an Indian context, really are driving the change at the CEO level. This change has to come from the top, where the CEO himself or herself feels that the diversity agenda has to be mainstream. And I always say this, I'm on the board of several companies, and whenever we have a presentation on succession planning, especially if there are some companies like auto companies, etc., that I'm on the board of, I insist that when somebody's presenting their succession, they need to present who are the women in their team and how they're nurturing them too. So it has to become you have to literally mandate it, I think, at some level at this stage. Just like SEBI mandated 1 woman as a board director, maybe we should do that to 2. You need to mandate it from top, because that's the only way change is going to come. Otherwise, it's going to be like, oh, it's an HR problem. Let me just show that we've had these 2 hires, so that when the CEO speaks at an investor meet, he can say, I've ticked off all the boxes on diversity, sustainability, climate change, etc. No, it has to be a way of life, and unfortunately, it can only come if it's mandated at this stage, so that it just becomes a way of life. And that's how Norway and Sweden did it. And today, it's nobody even thinks about the fact that in a boardroom, how many are women, how many are men. I was on the board of this company called Technip in France, and there were more women than men on that board. There was no conversation around this fact. In fact, I'm the one who, because I came out of the board and I'd never said to them, and the CEO then Thierry said to me, oh, I didn't even realize that there were more women than men, because it just was a way of life now, right? So I think to become a way of life, it has to be mandated at a regulator level, at a corporate level, at the management level, at HR level. HR needs to make it more of a mainstream. So it needs to be made more mainstream.
Thank you. Louise, I think you had a question you wanted to ask. Louise, Miranda.
Go ahead and ask it.
No, you go ahead, Louise. You're far more eloquent than I am. Yeah.
Yes, so Manisha, what I was going to ask was, what advice would you give your daughter's partner about managing your daughter's aspirations?
So I would say, look, she's born to a working woman. She's ambitious. She's fiercely ambitious. Even now, I can see that. And only if you're willing to accept that, you should get into this partnership, because the way I see her now, I tell her this, that at 19, she's far more ambitious than I was at 19. At 19, I only wanted my mom to let me go to a discotheque. That was my only priority, and she would never allow it. So that was my only priority, that how can I look cool, wear some distressed jeans and go to a disco? And she would say, no, go back to your room and study. So, and while my daughter talks about, what she wants to do with the next 15 years. So I would say, look, if you're ready to accept an equal partner, only then, you should team up with her. Otherwise, you're probably better off looking elsewhere, because she's seen it at home, and, she's imbibed it, and probably, even enhanced it more in her mind, and her desire to be a working woman and be the change that she wants to see in society. She really wants to do that. So I always joke with Tara that we'll have to probably pay her husband a little bit of stipend in the end to stay with you, to say, bribe him every month, because every month you're going to be wanting to do more and more. So we're going to have to build something on the side and say, please hang in there.
Yeah, Pradeep, you had a question. Pradeep, please go ahead.
Hi, Manisha.
Hello.
It is really inspiring listening to you, and you radiate so much joy and happiness. I guess it could be partly your yoga, maybe your golf, maybe your having outing with your friends. It's fantastic, but I think I get a feeling that you live life fully. You spoke about this man taking equal responsibility, etc. I mean, by the way, I'm a great woman supporter myself. Govind knows that. So,
Yes,
and
so
so did you have to work on this, like you told Luis about what you will tell your daughter's partner? Did you have to work on this with Sanjay right from the start, or did it just happen together, or do you still work on these things as you go along? That's one question. If you answer that, then I'll go to the next one.
Sure, that's a great question, and as I said to you before in the conversation that being born to a working mom and having an ecosystem of working aunts who were gynecologists and surgeons, etc., who would go out at all odd hours, Sanjay had seen how working couples live their lives and how the husbands, the uncles and the fathers have all, in his case, taken responsibility. But having said that, I think it's always work in progress. Both of us work similar careers, so we have similar priorities and similar deadlines and have same travel times, etc. And I have to make it clear sometimes that, look, this time my work is going to take priority. So I wouldn't say it's all easy. It has never been, it's not an easy, seamless ride. It's had its challenges, it's had its hiccups, a lot of times mums and my husband would call them mums on wheels, because they would just be flown in from Delhi and come in and support us. They were very supportive. But having said that, I think it's like any relationship, it's work in progress, even to date, that because both of us have the same challenging priorities, and yes, you always have to work. And sometimes I work too. Sometimes I've taken a backseat too and said, yes, you have to go. So I think both have to give and take. That's the only way a partnership works.
Fantastic. I mean, it's all about adaptation and adapting, I guess. So, and you're right, it's work in progress, because this is a lifelong journey. Just there will be differences, there will be challenges, but you come across with so much courage of your conviction and your own confidence that you exude. That's so nice, and I can see that. Tara is your daughter, right? I see that happening in her, as you said. How would you? We are about 96 or 100 people on the thing. How would you define for us, in your words? I have a feeling you're very successful in what you've done. How do you define success? How do you define happiness?
Not to put pressure on you, there's about 150 people on a YouTube that's also watching this,
okay.
Because there was a limit on this Zoom. So go ahead.
Right. Okay, good. That's fantastic. So, so how would you look and say 20 years down the road? How would you look back on your life and say, that was a successful life, that was a happy life? How do you define that?
So, I love that question. I would have a different response in every decade of my life for that question. If you ask me that question in 20s, I would say, oh my God, the next promotion, the next bonus, I must get the fastest promotion, the fastest, best bonus in the organization, the best deals. I want to do the largest deal. To the extent if Sanjay, my husband, did a bigger deal than me, I would sulk at home with him. And I would be like, oh my God, how did you? Literally, there were days that I would not talk to him for weeks because he had won a mandate that I had won. That's how fiercely competitive I was. Then come the 30s when I became the youngest CEOs of a multinational. That was like a big thing, and that was a big benchmark of my success. Today, when I mentor young people, I say to them, and a lot of time people get passed on for a promotion or a bonus. I say to them that, look, life is a marathon; it's not a sprint. And I say, when I was your age, I also thought of it as a sprint. I thought of it, oh my God, I'm going to switch this job because the person sitting next to me got the promotion faster than I did, and that's just because he goes out drinking with the boss. And I say to them, that is the wrong way to treat your career or to treat success or to treat happiness. Your success, your happiness is your journey. And, you may be working for 30 years, somebody else may be working for 10 years. 30 years, 10, 15 years from now, the person you competed with and beat up on may just have retired voluntarily or involuntarily, we don't know. But so make yourself your own benchmark. And it's very difficult when you're younger because the peer pressure is so much, right? Yeah, that also and so got a job with Google in New York and in the Bay Area, and I'm still here, or, nowadays press flashes it. so-and-so got this engineering job at 1.5 crore entry point. But life is not about these 2 or 3 years. It's about investing in yourself so that in the long run, you build a beautiful career, where people want to, you do so much value add that over time, people want you. It's not like just for 3 or 4 years, you're a flash in the pan. So in hindsight, I think your journey should be your own. Your success benchmark should be your own. Your happiness should be your own. Very difficult. It's easier said than done, especially in a corporate setup, because corporates promote, that's the nature of a corporate. They promote that whole competitiveness amongst people. But I think every time you need to sit back, even when you're younger, sit back and say, look, it's fine. I may have got passed on for this promotion or this bonus, but this organization, I'm learning so much. Let me invest in myself in the next 2 or 3 years, because come year 10, I will be a better manager or a better leader just because of the way this organization trains. And you will not make the nearest jump because this new organization has come and they're giving you double the money because they are setting up new. They don't have the right skills to invest in you and right talent. Stay the course, and you will come out the winner.
Yeah, I'm sure your colleagues might be thinking that it's all right for you to tell us that today.
Exactly.
But you didn't do it yourself.
I agree. That's why I carry out today. I said my answer will be every decade.
I agree entirely with you. I have been in the same boat. But wonderful, lovely response. And you are making a difference, and you will continue to make a difference. I guess that's what's going to give you joy and happiness.
Geeta, anything that's come up there? I've got one here, but I'll wait for you to see if there's anything that you want to bring out.
So one of the questions that came up, and I know that Manisha, you addressed it a little bit, but maybe there's something more to be said here, is do you think that the challenges that face women have changed in the last decade? And if so, if yes, how so?
Definitely. As I say to the young men and women in my organization, that, when Govind, Geeta, you and I started in our careers, once you went home, you went home. There was one landline we had. I don't think bosses or colleagues or clients were chasing you down on that one landline. Half the time it didn't even work, if you remember, in India. MTNL lines used to be down. So if it was rain in Bombay, the line didn't work. So once you went home, your time with your family was your own time. Days that you worked 14, 16 hours were there, but now you're constantly switched on, right? You have so much stimulus and people can get you anyways, your mobile, your iPad, email. So I feel that today the burn amongst youngsters is so much more, and it's so much harder to start off as an individual, because as a boss or a peer or a client, I expect you to be 24/7 switched on, including on Sundays, right? I don't think on Saturdays, Sundays, if you were not working on a live deal, I don't think anyone bothered me. If you're working on a live deal, yes, of course, as the analyst in the pool, I would have to do all the work. But otherwise, I was, pretty much on my own. Today, on Sunday, if you don't pick up a phone of a client for 2 hours, they're like, oh, where were you, right? So I think it's a lot harder. I always say I respect the young today, because we demand so much more from them than we did from my generation and your generation, just because there was not so much connectivity. Connectivity has been a blessing. We talked about it, how you can actually facilitate work from home, etc. But at the same time, it's brought its own challenges. And that's why I see a lot of people also, we talked about, women quitting. A lot of guys also want to quit because they just feel that this is just too hard, the burn, especially in the pandemic, right? You're working from home, but you're 24/7 on Monday through Sunday. A lot of my colleagues just gave up. They were like, this is not worth it. We don't want to do this, right? Because it's just burning me out. I'm newly married. I need to spend time with my wife. I can't be doing this. And it's just become a new way of life. So that somewhere needs to change. Some balance needs to be brought back. And organizations, by the way, are bringing it back, because a lot of the millennials are just quitting and saying, we won't take this. So I think some balance is coming. I can see it in my organization too. Friday, for example, in our organization is work from home. So Monday through Thursday, you come into work. Fridays, you work from home. Saturdays is basically a no connect day, to the extent it can happen with demanding clients. But, we're trying our best to bring that balance back. I think the pendulum swung one way and then the other way. And I think somewhere we need to find the middle and the balance.
Thank you.
Manisha, one question that a couple of people have asked is just from a perspective. We spent a lot of time over the last hour talking a lot about the workplace, the role in the workplace for everybody, and all that. Give us a quick sense of life in its fullness for Manisha, in terms of a mother, a wife, daughter. How have you viewed that in your journey of life? And a little bit about that would be really nice.
So I think is that it's pretty much switched on 24/7. So it is demanding, it's challenging. but it's also gratifying. Why do I do this 30 years into the profession is because I think I was one of the lucky few who found something I loved. I was an accidental banker. I wasn't meant to be a banker. I wanted to do a PhD and become a professor, but I came into banking and I loved it. And I think that's how you sustain. It's the point that Pradeep asked earlier, that how do you make a career? You make a career by choosing something you love, and then it loves you back. And I think this career gave me a lot. When I started off in Simla, and a lot of my friends tell me that I actually used to be a shy person, maybe not an introvert, but a shy person. And, and I think this job, dealing with CEOs, dealing with the best in class, gave me the confidence to be the person I am. So this job gave me a lot more than I gave this job, and, made me the person I am today. So that was nice that I fell in love with my profession. I think the fact that I married a man who with work in progress does tend to be fairly gender neutral, take responsibility for the house. I think helped in my personal life. But I think the biggest joy for me is the fact that my daughter takes pride in what I do. Not just because it's validation for me, because it makes me happy that she will always think of herself as someone who wants to be financially independent and chart her own course. And for me, that's important as a mother of a daughter, that I want her to be financially independent, chart her own course, choose her partner. And then if she voluntarily decides not to work, I respect that. But at least I want her to start off being somebody who wants an identity for herself, which is more than just a mother or a caregiver or nurturer. It's important for me, and that's my biggest pride, that I see it in her.
Vidur has a question. I think you probably know him, Manisha.
Hi, Vidur.
Yes.
Colleagues.
Yes. No, I had a question, and I have a Manisha story as well, and I have a question. So I'll start with the story, and then I'll go to my question. So she was talking about Tara right now, and I just remember one story that Manisha narrated in one of the meetings we had, that when Tara was asked to draw a family picture, she drew Manisha, Sanjay, and in one hand there was a BlackBerry, and those times were the BlackBerry days. So the story about Tara taking pride in what Manisha does was exemplified by that story. That it was Sanjay, Manisha, and Tara, and with Manisha with a BlackBerry in the hand and nothing else, So
yeah, good memory with her, and I can tell you that was very judgmentally looked upon by other women in the nursery at that point. But look, I'm survived it, and I'm here to tell the story.
And can I tell one other story which is slightly embarrassing, Manisha, with your permission?
Please.
So, on a German holiday, in the hotel room, Tara wanted chocolate milk or something to do with chocolate. And I think with the wrapper, the chocolate was put in the microwave oven and the fire alarm went off. And then people realized that that a hotshot CEO investment banker is in the room who doesn't know how to make chocolate milk, So that was the other. That
is one of the embarrassing stories of it. But you're right.
I'm sorry, I embarrassed you a little bit, but
no. And I say to all the young people today, woman or man, you should have cooking as a life skill, right? I mean, I think my mom did what she thought was right, but I think it's an important life skill to have. And if I were to relive my childhood, I think I would know it, because you can't be burning down hotels just because you don't know that wrappers don't go into microwaves.
Manisha, thank you very much for your time and for doing this. And I've had the privilege of working so closely with you and learning from you so much and being mentored by you for so many years. And whatever little success I've had in my career, a large part of it I owe to you. So I want to say thank you to you for that. But the question I had, Manisha, was, you've had a stellar journey, and now, and how do the next 2 decades look like for Manisha Girotra?
So I think what excites me. As I said, Vidur, and you and I have shared our love for banking and working with clients. Recently also we were dealing on a client situation. So we both love that. So that bit stays. I think that bit doesn't go away. It's both your and my careers are hard. So if you don't love what you do, you can't sustain it. So I think that bit remains. But I think today I want to do a lot more in other fields. So, and the field that's closest to my heart is trying to do something for women, girl child, which is why, when Govind said, will you do this? My first topic was, I want to talk on sisterhood, because I feel we can do so much more to lift each other. And that's really where my passion is, whether it's setting up schools for a girl child, etc. That's fine. But I want to mentor as many women as I can. And not just by mentor, I don't mean like I'm some, my life experience of what you should have, but just share my experiences and say, look, all of this will pass, just stay the course, because I genuinely believe organizations benefit, homes benefit, when the woman works. It's a much happier. In short term, it has challenges, but in long term, everyone's happier. And a woman has her own aspirations, and we must respect that. And I want to work as much as I can in that area, because that's what makes me now. That's what excites me more than anything else.
And you perceive doing this well into your 70s as well?
No.
Sorry, Manisha?
70s, I'll have a drink with you, Vedu. That's it. I'll be an old woman and I come and have a drink in your house.
Okay, we got one last question, Rajesh, and then we'll hand it out to Geeta to close it out. Rajesh,
Hi,
go ahead.
Manisha, Rajesh here.
Hi.
Great to hear you. Great talk and comes from the heart, I guess. So on a lighter note, I'm just going to give you one piece of advice. Why don't you make Moelis a full women investment banking sisterhood?
I really wanted to do that, but then I decided.
No, do it. Tell your boss. Tell your boss.
No, but I thought about this, and Rajesh, why I don't want to do it is because I want the opportunity to teach the men to think differently, right? And as a boss, I can do it. So
why don't you do 80-20? 80% women, 20% men.
Done. That's fine.
Govind will help you hire the bankers, Manisha.
Done, Govind. Let's do it.
Okay.
But great hearing you, Manisha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Geeta, over to you.
Well, thanks so much, Manisha. You've covered a bunch of topics, and, you were just so frank and open about all of your thoughts. Really enjoyed it. A question for you. You've talked several times about, your desire to promote sisterhood, and you just mentioned mentoring in some way, shape, or form, yet to be defined. So can you share a little bit more about, how you think that could take off, and whether there are folks in this group that could, what's your call to action for that someone here could help you, or what are some of your thoughts on that?
So that's a great question. And I'm grateful for that, Geeta, because I think till now, the way I've been doing it has pretty much been like a sole crusader, with some, of course, support with my current organization. But I think the systemic change that I would like to see, I have now figured out after the last 4 or 5 years, is not going to happen just by my doing this by myself, right? There's a friend of mine who set up this organization called Aspire for Her, which is basically bringing women back to the workforce, to what Govind mentioned. And it's literally become like a large cult where women are really getting together. So I want to do something like that. And, Geeta, if there is something that I could partner with AMA here or with people here and do it, it would be my honor to do it, because I really feel that you need an institution to make the change. It cannot be made by individuals, because you're fighting a large battle and you need far more support to do it.
Thank you. Well,
Thank
with
you.
that, I wanted to thank everyone who's been on this call and on a YouTube link outside for being with us. I'll hand it over to Dr. Savan Guliawala to say the last words. And thank you very much for joining the session.
Thank you, Govind. Manisha, can't thank you less than, any other best of the conferences, seminars that I would have attended. You've spoken it absolutely as just somebody's mentioned from the heart, and so convincing, and you done something which is, I would use the word eye opener for many organizations, more than just many people. So, of course, Govind, just for the background, in the first place, Mr. Iyer and I was very close to him again, and Mr. Radia said, who under whose auspices this seminar is, that he was a mentor, and I can only do is echo him, that he was my mentor too, and he has done something wonderful for AMA as well as people. So thanks to you and Geeta also, that you are carrying on the tradition. For everybody, of course, Zoom has 100 people. That is the restriction, but we have many, many more on the YouTube also. So this was, Manisha, so many people were so keen to hear you. And I think, Govind, we could do the best of the fireside chat or otherwise question answers that we could do today. But the 2-3 things that I would just want to mention before I wind up is that take home from Manisha's so many points that she had given. Of course, born as a banker, so there's a upbringing or the banking in the blood. But then I see that there's a upbringing, there's a cultural upbringing in terms of, upliftment of the community that your mom was doing, teaching the whole tribe, as the word that you mentioned. And that something also is so important for everybody of us to be involved, so one way or the other. And the best part that I could see, and I can also see, I am exactly 31 years in my profession. I do corporate finance at Deloitte, and that's also the whole life that I've been doing. But you succeeded that, as you mentioned, in a male-dominated world, which certainly, if it is not, it was, and certainly that, and the way you paved your career is exemplary for sure. You worked with, of course, the system, then an ecosystem that you mentioned is changing, which is good to know. And we are also seeing that we are trying to do a 50-50 at the entry level so far as the diversity is concerned. And a lot of organizations, and your advice to the organization was very, very well, I think, noted, that it is not just the role in the organization, but his or her personal priorities also cannot be ignored by the organization in this process. Diversity cannot be, as you mentioned, an HR KPI. It has to be a way of life. It's so very important, because sometimes it happens, okay, tick in the box. And you said that you have to be your own benchmark. Thanks for giving such advice. But 2 tips for young women I should not not mention that you give. And one tip that you said, that while finding for the young women, while finding the right groom, you interview your mother-in-law whether she's going to be supportive. So well said. And that's and one important and a very important thing is, you said, shake off the guilt. You don't need to seek validation all the time when it's women. But I would think that, yes, shaking off guilt is also a process. It cannot happen at a flick of, because as you grow, you will realize that this doesn't help. And to end, certainly, I would say what Pradeep Malik, I would reiterate him, that you are certainly making a difference. Thanks, Manisha, for doing that, across and across organization. This is going as a message also. I would certainly again thank Manisha, you, of course, for being one of our speakers. And you heard Mr. Radia, the host of speakers that we had earlier in the auspices of Dr. Lalita Iyer, this series. Thanks, Govind and Geeta. Thank you so much for having Manisha for us, and we having you also on board for this session. And thanks to all the participants on the Zoom as well as on the YouTube for joining in a large number. And certainly I would thank the Secretariat. Unmesh is doing a wonderful job at AMA, setting up so many of the programs. We look forward to Manisha to have you whenever you're in Ahmedabad at our AMA, Ahmedabad Management Association. And Govind, we would also want to engage more, because this particular, Dr. Lalita Iyer's, this experience center, as we could tell, is doing wonderful so far as year-on-year sending messages are concerned. Thank you once again for everybody, and thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All. Yeah. Thank you. Manisha.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Really grateful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with your permission, shall I end the program, sir?
Yes, you may. Thank you, Geeta.
Thank you so much, sir.